Do you think a whole food plant-based lifestyle is for everyone?
Yes, I do. So when it comes to us thriving as human beings, the way to eat is whole food plant-based. Some people will be like, "Oh, you think you're better than us because, you're helping the environment, you're like saving animals." It's like, "No, I don't think you're better, but I feel fucking awesome."
All right, welcome to another episode on a plant-based
Mm.
production. Let's have Miss Kaska Kovner wave to the camera. Kaska, thank you so
Hey.
much
Thanks for
and
having me.
meeting me.
Yeah.
We just met 30 minutes ago,
Yep.
and I guess that goes to show how supportive the vegan community is of each other and how much of a mission we are to raise awareness, create change, inspire others to convert or to be more aware.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's kind of the whole underlying message of a plant-based production and this podcast, to raise awareness and show people how much of a benefit eating vegan and living a plant-based lifestyle can be for you.
Yeah, it's true. And we didn't like just meet. It was because you were at a farmer's market, and it was through the community where, we met through a friend. So, and they brought us together. So that's awesome. Just, keeping those links and growing, the people that we know, which is awesome.
Yeah, so shout out to David Steele.
Mm-hmm.
Met David at the Leucadia Farmers Market. I looked over, he was eating a vegan Kenyan plate at the Leucadia Farmers Market. I said, "Oh man, are you vegan?" "Yeah, I have a podcast." "Oh, you have to interview Kashka." So that was many months ago, and stoked you're here.
Yeah.
So thanks again.
Thank you.
How do you rebuttal when someone goes, "I just can't go vegan"? Or you're a mom of two?
Yes.
And are your kids?
They're 10 and 8.
Are they
and
vegan?
The whole family, the whole house is the trash cans are vegan. If someone wants to stay in the house with a pet, they feed the pet out. Yeah, we're very vegan.
Yeah.
In an open-hearted way, But we're very, plant-based. One of the unique things for me is when I'm talking to people and they might mention the fact that they, would have a hard time going vegan. I've been vegan now for 9 years. And one of the things that morphed into along the journey, which I'm sure we'll talk about, is I started helping people heal from chronic disease. So now when people ask what I do health education and disease reversal, working closely with groups like the Plantrition Project and American College of Lifestyle Medicine, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. There's a lot of peer-reviewed information coming out. And so that puts me in contact with people who aren't vegan and they have chronic disease. And it's not like I'm working with them saying, well, you have to go vegan. I help them understand the way that the food that they're eating affects their health and created the chronic disease they're now dealing with. And then they're like, oh, geez, but I've got to give up eggs and milk and dairy. And I help them understand how that, or meat, dairy, and eggs, and how that, the why. And, and then I like ease them in. I'm like, you know what? Let's get you 6 months symptom free. This is Crohn's, IBD, IBS, skin issues, asthma. I've worked with autism. I've worked with, diabetes, all sorts of things, autoimmune issues. And, I say, let's get you 6 months symptom free. And then you can make a choice from there if you want to bring, meat, dairy, or eggs back into your diet. And by the time they're 6 months symptom free, they'll like romanticize for the first bit. And I'm like, come on, we'll do this. We got this. But as they see themselves get healthier, and as they don't have those products in their body, they will smell them. They're like, I don't even want to eat eggs anymore, because it just, when you give yourself that ability to not have it and not even see it from the, there's various forms of vegan. And when you don't see it from like the animal rights vegan perspective, you just get to hear it from like the way your body's responding, and you learn those other ways of eating. It opens their minds, and they're amazed, and they're not even looking to go vegan. They're just looking to fix their health. So
I like how you said 6 months, because if you're trying this, it's not a 1 month try and not figure it out and bail.
Yeah.
You need a little bit of sustainability and commitment to learn about it.
It's true.
Because we're not raised, I wasn't, and I think in schools you're not taught how all these natural foods are medicine.
Yeah.
And
like my tattoo says, all this education, no one teaches us where, where our food comes from or how it's actually affecting our bodies.
I like to say we should all have our masters in nutrition.
Yeah.
And even doctors don't get a lick of credits in nutrition classes. So when you're doing something for health, 6 months is a perfect time frame.
Yeah.
Because you have to learn. We don't know. I didn't know. You have to watch, read, trial and error.
It's true. It's true, especially when I'm dealing with a chronic disease, getting them 6 months symptom free so that we can have a lot of leverage there, for them to feel better and to, if we're working with pharmaceuticals or whatever too. If it's just an average person who's healthy and, and they're like, I don't know, I mean, even a month, just like, can you for a month? Mm-hmm. 6 months can feel huge for someone like that because they don't have the weight and pressure of something that's making them feel ill in their body. So, saying just see how you feel for a month. And then when they put it back in, they're like, oh my gosh, I was off eggs for a month. My skin was amazing. These things changed. I didn't notice as much phlegm and mucus. And then I ate eggs again and I had the most terrible farts and these things came in and it's like, well, they get to see the effects it actually has on their body. Someone that I am close with in life as a friend, she was like, okay, gosh, I'll go off of eggs, specifically. And she's off dairy and meat, but she loved her eggs and she was off for a while. And then I saw her for coffee last week and she's like, I ate 3 eggs. My hip hurts so bad. My farts stink. My belly hurts. She's like, you were right. Just seeing the effect of that. You look at the peer-reviewed information on how eggs affect our body and how much egg is healthy for us to eat as a human, and it says like 0.3 of an egg a week. It's very, very small as far as how it's going to affect our bodies because it's a fallback food as far as evolution goes for us. It's not something we're made to eat, but it's something that we can eat, and when we eat it as a natural human being before we're in this, world of supermarkets and everything, we weren't highly exposed to it. So it's really cool with that month. So going back into how long to give it a try, a week, 2 weeks, a month, if you can even do that when you're making, just seeing like, well, what is this vegan thing all about? The more time you give yourself, you'll see that that the benefits are there, especially if you try the food again. Some people feel so bad. They're like, oh, for me, a lot of people feel like they're going to disappoint me if they talk to me and they've had, an egg or milk or, and I'm like, well, how did it feel? And then they'll tell me how it feels. I'm like, well, it's awesome that you had that again because you were able to see why you're doing it. And when we know our why, we do it better, our goals and everything better. So, yeah.
My buddy, Chef John, one of his close friends, was like, eggs rock my body. Yeah. And I just met him. And I go, well, one of the top heart surgeons, Caldwell Esselstyn's son, Rip Esselstyn, I had to dig 1 minute. He talks about how one egg has as much cholesterol as 2 Whoppers from Burger King.
Really? Dang.
Yeah. So, like you're saying, 0.3 of an egg.
Yeah.
Eggs are an interesting, common food group that we've processed and fluffed up. And
the egg industry has so much money, and we've heard so many times. I mean, I even just saw in the Washington Post, they posted an article this week that said cheese isn't as bad for us as, they're all saying, dairy industry is like out there strong, putting forward these, these articles for people to read, to give them the news they want to hear. And that guy who thinks eggs, rock his body, well, he's been eating eggs for a really long time, possibly most likely his whole life. His body, he's like, oh, well, you don't understand, my body craves eggs. They want eggs. I give my body what it's asking for. I'm like, well, that's because that's what you've been giving your body. Your body's going to ask for what it knows. Mm-hmm. My body, if I wanted to, would ask for, Skittles or whatever, but we all know Skittles aren't good for us, but we create our own cravings. It doesn't mean it's healthy.
And you could change your taste buds from that Skittle
incredibly.
To craving wheat shots and kale and some more
or even
bitter
rice
stuff.
And beans,
Beans,
with some, of your yummy, sauce on top of it, and an awesome salad with, some baked, some potatoes. You don't have to go full on rabbit mode, you know.
Even though you're pushing that rabbit mode right now.
Yeah,
and
I am.
You're in the middle of a fast.
Yes.
And describe the type of fast you're on and a little bit about this present journey with water fasting.
Okay. When I talk to people about like my fasting and even the way that I eat when I'm not fasting, I remind people I've been doing this for a long time and with different goals. You know, I wanted to get to clean, like really, I have so many available fruits and vegetables and options here in Southern California. So where I am isn't, you know, you got to meet yourself where you are and get yourself to where you want to be health-wise in a speed that works for you. So where I am is going to sound extreme.
And how long have you been whole food plant-based?
I've been whole food plant-based, I want to say, I started vegan. I tell my people I work with, my clients, that vegan doesn't mean healthy, but it means super fun, you know, because you can have vegan donuts and burgers and everything. So I was vegan 9 years, and I'd say whole food plant-based, I've got to think about it, I want to say since 2017. I've been going at it strong. And so right now, but I've been fasting and cleansing for 15 years. You know, I started with the master fasts or master cleanses back in the day, and then I went to juice, and now I do water fast, which is water only. And it's going to sound extreme when I say I'm on a 26 day. I've done 30 days before, 21 days before. When I go this long, I work with a professional, you know, who checks my numbers, you know, my blood glucose, my blood pressure, you know, all of my bio levels to make sure that I'm staying healthy as I go. So you never want to do something like that. Well, I'm just going to say on your podcast, you never want to do something like that alone, you know. And so I love to do it because I ate so fun when I was a teenager and kid. You know, my mom and dad loved sugar. I had tons of sugar in my life, though they fed us rather healthy to the American diet. But like spaghetti was the number one thing my mom would feed us, and, you know, eggs all the time. And then when I became in control of my own food, it's like Lucky Charms and SpaghettiOs and Reese's Peanut Butter Cups and Reese's Pieces and, you know, all of these things for days. In college, let's not even talk about it, you know. Even though as a vegetarian, I'm still, you know, eating tons of very fun foods. So that accumulates, and we bioaccumulate this stuff, and especially we bioaccumulate fat. And the things that we eat when our body is overburdened with it, we'll just like stick it in our fat and it'll like hang out there. Or we can even have, you know, remnants of what we're eating in our digestive tract. So I love fasting because our fat isn't meant to be just this stable, like build layer or stagnant, right? If we just let our fat layer just sit there, without any kind of alteration or cleaning out, then, you know, things fester. And so I love fasting because it allows my, you know, body to, you know, eat up the fat that I'm in, you know, that I've accumulated. It allows my body to go into autophagy, you know, cleaning up, seeing what's old and has to get out of there. You know, it allows when I'm refeeding, when you refeed well, there's evidence that shows that you can actually, it's a natural way to promote stem cell production, you know, for any kind of like healing that you need, or help with your telomeres for longevity in life. And so I just love it. And I love the way it feels. And I've fed myself now in a way that I no longer get hungry because, you know, I don't know if you've spoken about before, but there's different ways of eating. There's a hedonic eating cycle where we eat like standard American diet, and you have all these very stimulating foods that have sugar, salt, and fat. And so you'll eat and your body's like super stimulated. And when you're coming down from that stimulation, whether it's sugar, salt, or fat, and how highly processed it is, your body will be like, oh, geez, I need more of that, you know? So, you know, we also call it detox. And so you can get hungry, hangry, sleepy, feel like you're going to pass out. And that's just all signs of, you know, your body going, you know, I need more of that stimulation. Whereas a natural eating cycle for a human being is we eat, we get our energy, you know, natural form, depending on what you're eating. And then you come down from eating and you coast for a while. And now we call it time restricted eating or intermittent fasting, you know? Yeah, because we've forgotten that that's how we're meant to eat. And we have to have a thing there to help people focus on bringing that back in. Like, we're not supposed to eat all the time.
Hashtag eat less, do more.
Eat less, do more, move your body. So I don't get hungry anymore. It's not that I don't eat. It's just that now I'm like, oh, it seems like a good time to eat. So I'll eat some food, and then the day will go on and I'll be busy and doing things. And then later on, I'm like, oh, I just feel like a she again. But the one thing that does happen is I feel like when I don't want to eat, my body's like, please don't feed me right now. I am like satiated. I'm full. I don't want any more food right now. So it's so interesting that flip that has occurred with my eating.
How many days into the fast are you?
I'm day 7 right now.
On a 30-day.
I'm doing 26 this time.
26.
Yeah.
Cool. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
And you just feel, how do you feel? You're just good.
I feel really good, but I've done
You've
a
done
lot of
this
fasting.
quite often.
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of stuff that's going to be entering my bloodstream, wanting to leave and causing a feeling of ill health.
I just think there's one word for that: conditioning.
Yeah.
And we associate conditioning with athletics and working out.
Yeah.
And maybe more
social conditioning.
Social, mental conditioning.
Yeah.
That you could communicate and not revert to food for emotional outlets, and be able to not just, like you said, get charged up and drop down because of the food and what you're putting in.
Yeah.
Do you love it more when you don't have it and then you come back to it? Like the appreciation.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Anything is just like,
we take it for granted when you're just kind of.
Oh, flavor when it comes back to you is just like, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to try to eat once or twice a day. I need to extend my fast. I've done one whole day, and I think I haven't eaten yet today. Had a cup of coffee, so I could probably go all day on one cup of coffee.
Yeah.
What do you think about coffee?
So
a waste compared to tea. Michael Greger says every time you drink coffee, you're missing a chance to drink green tea.
It's true, but Dr. Will Bolskowitz says, and also who, I'm forgetting his name right now. I love him. He's done the studies with National Geographic on longevity blue zones.
Dan Buettner
and Will Bolskowitz of Fiber Fueled both say that the polyphenols that black coffee has. I mean, Will Bolskowitz was just on a Plant Powered podcast and by the Physicians Committee, and he, like, of the top 5 foods he suggested, he talked about coffee first.
Woohoo.
Black coffee.
Well, of North County, San Diego is probably fist pumping.
Oh yeah,
a bunch of coffee drinkers.
I'm sure he said coffee first, so people would be interested to hear the rest of his list.
He was getting paid out by some coffee brand.
Well, no, I mean, if he had said kimchi and sauerkraut first, people would be like, okay, whatever. But you give people like black coffee first, and they're like, yeah. And of course, it all depends on what you put in your coffee, but black coffee,
quality black coffee is decent.
Yeah. And then you're just like, do I go to Ironsmith? Do I go to Lofty? Do I go to Bird Rock? Where do I go?
The key is to not add the $1.50, $2 charge for oat milk, just black.
Yeah, well, especially oat milk is so hard these days. It's not my favorite. I mean, I think it's awesome for people making a transition, but if you're looking to up your health, oat milk is great. Almonds are awesome, but I don't really like it that much because of the water consumption for the planet. Soy is my favorite milk alternative for health, for the planet.
The word soy for women seems to scare people.
And men. Because they're worried about estrogen.
That's tofu?
Well, soy in general. Soy milk, tofu, tempeh, edamame. It's the meat and dairy industry right there because it is so good for our planet. It is because it's a low water crop. It is so good for our bodies because it does have estrogen in it, but it is a phytoestrogen, which means it affects plants. You know, for us, it's I think it's a polyphenol. You know, and it's funny because the people who are worried about having soy, if they're vegan, then they're not having, meat and dairy. But a lot of people who are omnivores tell me, they're like, oh, I don't eat soy because of estrogen. I'm like, but you eat meat and dairy, right? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, what comes out of a nursing mother mammal? Milk. And she's filled with hormonal estrogens, and that's where you're going to be affected with man boobs and weight gain and throwing off your thyroid and throwing off your whole, science, balance inside of your body. And also the and they're like, oh well, they're plowing. Even Joe Rogan's like they're ruining the Amazon forests to grow soy, and it's like, well, 77% ish of that crop of that we are destroying the Amazon for soy is being fed to animals. And then a large portion after that is going into highly processed food oils. And then you're getting a small, I think it's about 4% of it goes into soy edible products, the tofu, tempeh, edamame. And when you have different receptors inside of your body for hormones. And so when you're eating phytoestrogen, which comes from soy products, versus hormonal estrogen, it's going to a completely different, it's not going to affect the hormones that people are thinking of. Another thing to think about that with soy is Asian cultures, like, all over Japan and other places that are going to eat a lot of soy products, they didn't have the female-related cancers that we're seeing on the rise right now until they started eating standard American diet. And they were eating soy sauce, edamame, tempeh, tofu for centuries, if not long. I mean, I don't even know. I don't know how long tempeh's been around. I'm sure you could even go into 1,000 years with that, but and fermented soy products, and they didn't have breast cancer. How Asians are known for being slender. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm saying Asians, people are like, oh, how dare you, but people who live in Japan, or they did sister studies of women who stayed in in the country of Japan, and then women who moved to San Francisco, and this was back, I don't remember the years, but it was a while ago. And they studied the health effects as one of the sisters took on standard American diet, and chances of cancer went up, chances of cardiovascular disease, all-cause mortality went up because they brought in milk versus soy milk, right? They brought in meat, and they're eating meat in Japan. They're just not eating it to the same amount and quantity that we eat here in the United States. And then the eggs also through the roof.
It's like a seasoning. Like a little piece of meat, little delicacy. Yeah,
and it's usually also like larger pieces are more celebratory. Like it's a birthday, or that's when you're like, well, it's Japan. They're eating fish all the time. Like they're not eating it as much as you think. It's not that they're not eating it, but they're eating a lot more. Fruits, vegetables, and legumes.
The China study, the longest study conducted on disease from East and Asia to the Western culture. I read that, and that was really insightful with how we're creating diseases here through our diet, and how the East and Asia they're not creating man-made diseases.
They are now, but back then it was, that was such a monumental study that they were able to do. And even the studies on casein that T. Colin Campbell, the author of, or one of the scientists with the China study, they could literally turn on and off cancer in rats. They thought it was a false. They're like, oh, this study didn't work, because studies don't just work black and white like that. But then they did it, and they did it again. This is through Cornell University. And they found that, again, they're just turn on once you get over a certain level of casein inside of the body, which is casein and whey are the two prominent proteins inside of milk. Cancer is turned on. You get below it, and it's not much. It's, I think, below 5%, they couldn't turn on cancer. And above like 7% or near 10%, I can't remember, they would turn on cancer. So it's not like these other studies where they're like, oh, this artificial sweetener causes cancer in rats, and they're like pumping, amounts that you would never even consume as a human. At least you'd have to work really hard into rats. It's like, it's very low levels, compared to what we would eat.
Yeah, casein.
Yeah.
Look that up, people. It's daunting.
And whey, and we have so many options now. I know I was knocking oat. The reason oat is hard is because it will absorb environmental toxins really easily. And most oat milks have oil and sugar in them. You look at the thing, and it's the box, the ingredients, and there's usually oil in it. There's not like a clean oat option to have. Whereas you can go to soy, and there's a lot of soy options where it's like soybeans and water. And then they'll sometimes add vitamins and other, nutrients, and then sometimes sugar and other things too. But there's a lot of companies that will just do soy and water. My favorite is Eden Soy.
And it's not refrigerated.
No, it's not. It's box.
I'll see that in small container.
Yeah,
my mom has that.
Yeah, I love it. This is what I give to my kids.
And
2 girls.
Like talking to parents now.
Yeah.
and leading by example and just doing, or do you get them on board? What was your tactic or kind of thought process in, all right, I want to set this example and I want my kids to follow because I think this is the best for them? How did you approach that?
So as a parent with life in general, like living here, I think that we need to give our children the why. Like, this is why we're doing this. This is why we're here, especially, when they were really little and they're like, well, why? The question of why usually comes in around 2.5, 3 years old. And, you think that it's just like, well, why are you even asking me why again? But they're connecting dots. They're new here. They don't understand why everything's happening. So for my kids, I've explained it from, there's a trifecta. There's the animals, which is why I went vegan. Some people go, there's 3 things. Some people go for animals. Health. Environment. Exactly.
3 pillars.
Exactly. The 3 pillars.
And then someone always likes to branch off for fitness or spirituality. 3 pillars.
Yeah. Well,
there's subcategories within those
amazing 3 subcategories. There's feminism. There's workers' rights, because most of the people working slaughterhouses are usually underprivileged, or they're refugees, because they're not in the best parts of town.
Speaking of that, on my way back from Joshua Tree, I followed the maps, and for a while my friend who I was riding with, she goes, oh, you went this way? She was vegan too, and it's like the worst smell I've ever smelled, and there were slaughterhouses everywhere, and they're just laying in their own shit. And
they're laying in poo. It's bad for their water. It's bad for you. They have to breathe it in all the time. So what it's doing to their health, what it's doing, it's not going through a sewage treatment plant, so it's going right into our water, into our oceans, causing that gets into the environmental issues where you're causing these warming and blooms because there's too many nutrients flowing in, and there's so many things there. So with the children, with my kids, I especially love the books by Ruby Roth. Check out her books, even for adults. Like, if you want to have a really rad, solid understanding of why, you're like, I know vegan's right, it's so hard to do it, I want to do it. Ruby Roth's books are amazing, and she's so well writes to, it's not written in like a kid fashion. It's read in a human fashion it's written in a human fashion with lots of illustrations and beautiful things. And anyway, so I tell my kids, this is why. This is how we affect the environment. This is how it affects the animals. This is how it is affecting. And I do that with everything. I do it with news. I do it with like women's rights in the world, what it's like to be a woman, because they're both girls. And so other people who want to talk to me about raising vegan kids, because they're like, well, you're vegan, but are your kids vegan? One is, they just, a lot of them are parents at school. And one of the things I loved this year was I arrived to school. It's the first year my kids are back at school, because we were out for 3 years, starting with COVID until now. And they're 10 and 8. And I, during one of the orientation days of the first day of school, I asked, are there other, health restrictions here? Because I love to cook food and bring it in for the potlucks or class parties or whatever. So I want to know what I wanted to be aware of. And I was like, is there vegan, gluten-free? And one of the moms was like, do you mean cardboard? And all of the moms were like, ha, 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 But since then, I will say, at the Thanksgiving feast, I had my plant-based, gravy and my mashed potatoes and mac and cheese and desserts and all of these things there. And and pecan pie. I've got a rad pecan pie recipe. And it was gone. At first, people were like, And then someone was like, well, I'll taste it. And then everyone ate it, and it's just, they're like, the teachers are literally using my spoon, because they're like, do you have more gravy? And I'm like, I'm out. And they're like, well, there's a little bit. They're like scraping my gravy pot, because I made a huge batch thinking, I'm like, well, we'll see how much they eat, and hopefully I won't have to make more for Thanksgiving. And I got a huge pot of it, and it was gone. So since then, they're, when they know, because shortly after that was Christmas, what are you bringing for Christmas? They get excited because there's so much flavor. They just don't know it. So that's one of the ways, is leading by example. When I started my vegan path, I was vegan for the animals. And I was like, oh my God, I have got to tell everybody. I've got to tell what we're doing. People are, I think we're good. People can be so good. And I just assumed, like, we must not know. Like, people must not know. I've found out what we're doing to these animals, and the conditions that they're living in. And, and I was that like, grrr, vegan. And it wasn't, I understand how people get there. And I understand also like the depression that can come from those first feelings. Cause I've worked with people doing a vegan transition and, they're having a hard time. And that, when you go to a grocery store and you're seeing it differently from food to animal parts, it's just like, oh my God. And like, it can weigh so much. And so I've done the full spectrum of like, this is what you need to do. And like, if you only knew, like pay attention, like watch these videos. And then now by leading by example and just being who I am and having my kids be healthy and like feeding people, they're like, wow, this is like, I could do this, and that's, especially I've learned a lot of compassion through working with my clients for helping them with chronic disease because they want to be healthy. Vegan is not on their agenda in life, but it's something that they're doing with health. And so that has taught me so much with the communication of like helping people. And when they're like, oh, you're going to be so mad at me, I ate chicken. I'm like, I'm not mad at you. It's your body. You want to get healthy, right? And then having them see and having that compassion there and meeting them where they are. And when you do that, because some people are like, I want to go vegan tomorrow, help me. And some people are like, I never want to go vegan, and just, education and comfort and, because that's how we all are, right? You don't want to be with someone who's just like judging you, and you want to be with someone who's bringing you in and making you feel comfortable. And yeah, so that's the spectrum.
Yeah, it was very similar, just kind of trying to beaten it into people.
Yeah.
And you just realize that that's not how anyone wants to change.
Yeah.
And leading by example and just consistency and being happy and just showing how great it is by living or podcasting or not recording anything and just continuing to do.
Yeah.
It takes time for people to come around, and hopefully they realize that it's worth a try.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be doing a podcast if it wasn't worthy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be making sauces if I didn't think they tasted good. You pursue stuff that you believe in, and you got to get the trust from others to believe in it as well. And
it's true.
Probably the hardest part that, hey, you're not going to melt away. You're going to be just as strong. You might even be stronger.
Well, one of the things, going back to the kid conversation, was what brought me into working with health was I was vegan and I was having my babies, and they're like, are you going to raise them vegan? I'm like, I don't know. Like, maybe we're biodiverse. Maybe I need it for me, but maybe other people need to eat meat or dairy or eggs. So that dug me into the scientific studies. That got me into the health side. And I was like, not only am I not going to kill my kids, but this is so amazing for the microbiome, for the brain, for the skin, for all of our different, just the way our body works in general.
So vegan since birth?
No, I was making a transition. Well, I was vegan. My husband wasn't. Mm. And I didn't, when I went vegan, my husband had been together for 15 years. And I didn't want to lose my relationship because I changed my lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And so when I went to him, I'm like, I'm going to go vegan. Like, please. Yeah. Like I was like curious to see how he's going to feel about it. Be like, oh, great. Another vegan, like those vegans, especially, 9 years ago, it wasn't nearly as popular as it has become. And he was really supportive. And he's like, that's nice. Just don't tell me what to do. And it's one of the things I love about him is he makes his choices. And so I was like, okay, but I know he's a nerd. I'm a nerd. If I give the right information, it'll work. So I would like work around. I'm like, well, this is how the animals are treated. He's like, humans are animals. Lions eat meat. I'm a human. I made a meat. I eat meat. And I'm like, okay. So finally, the Oxford study in 2017 came out talking about climatary effect of eating animals. And they said, it was a multinational peer-reviewed study. And it said that if we were willing to go plant-based as a Western culture, this isn't even talking about people who are needing to fish because of where they live. They don't have grocery store markets. They don't, have all these options. If you're living in Kenya or Peru and various, and not in the city metropolitan areas. If you're living, where you have to live off of the land and you only have so many options, or you only know what you know, right? But as a Western culture, if we were to go plant-based, we could curtail what we're seeing in climate change by 70-ish%, because it uses so much fossil fuels to move the food around, to move animals around, to farm the fields, to put, the production into these, animal-based foods. It adds up to about, it's more than every single form of of transportation, planes, trains, cars, all that combined, which is crazy. You know, it's also monumental for reversing climate change because of what we spoke about earlier, how we have tons of untreated sewage and these fertilizers because we have to excessively farm to eat this way. We have to farm way more to feed all of these animals. They're the middleman, it's anywhere from like 5 to 10, calories per calorie we're getting, right? So a chicken needs less calories per calorie that we're going to get out of it, but then a cow needs more. And so it's a food waste system. It's on average about 800% food waste system by dumping all of these plants into this much meat. So we would farm much less, which means far more fertilizers would be going into our water systems. And like if you look at where the Mississippi dumps into the Gulf of Mexico, where we're having all of these crazy storms and warming of the water and die-offs, that's largely because we have all these excessive nutrients, and that's happening all over the world where these dead zones are. And there's just so many beneficial things. So I showed that to my husband. He's like, okay, I'll go. So he went for the environment, and then he saw the animals and the health. And then, of course, living with me and my children living with me and seeing my clients get better. That is another reason that they're just like on it. Like, we're good. We love living this way. So much why there. So my kids would eat some of his cheese or eat some of his eggs or eat some of whatever he had on his plate. And that was just part of, parenting in a way with my husband that he kept. I love rocking the boat, but I don't want to make life harder than it needs to be. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's why they weren't vegan since birth.
And can you not speak for your husband, although through observations for the men and husbands out there who might have a partner or dating, I'm dating. And for me, it's important to meet someone aligned with, lifestyle.
Yeah.
And being vegan.
Yeah.
How long has he been vegan?
So that was, let's see, our youngest was 3. So it was 5 years ago.
And feels good, is more enthused about it and like 100% on board. And does he ever have those, wow, thank you?
He like multi-level amazed by it. One is he's a very he's muscular slender, and so he's always like, oh man, I wish I was bigger. So he definitely, before he was vegan, he would like make sure to get his meat in, so his muscles and all that. And when one of the things, so physique wise, what changed was he lost inflammation and he toned up and and the muscles were just much more pronounced.
Yeah, you see it in your forearms, like your skin tightens.
Chest,
yeah, your
stomach,
abs,
all
your
the inflammation. Yeah,
tightens right up.
Yeah, we look at older pictures, and he's older than I am. I'm almost 40. He's 55, and he's just like, we look at pictures of him when he was younger. He's like, I just look so inflamed,
Me too. Puffy,
exactly. And so that was one of the things. Another thing is just like, especially being a 55-year-old man, we're getting to that place where you've bioaccumulated so much cholesterol inside of your cardiovascular tract. A lot of people around that age, around our age even, you start to get that health report back from your physicals. We're like, oh, your cholesterol is pretty high. You're like, oh, geez, what am I supposed to do? How much of this stuff can I eat to get my cholesterol low? What is cholesterol? Where does cholesterol even come from? So it he now gets to benefit from not having cholesterol issues. And, we're watching his friends get older, and it's the health check comes due, from what we've bioaccumulated. You don't really see it in your 20s. You kind of see it in your 30s. But as you bioaccumulate more, as you add more of this stuff in your life and your body, keeps quite a bit of it, you get to see the different health outcomes. And it doesn't mean that all health is caused by what we eat, but significantly is altered. That gets into epigenetics and just, if you put cholesterol in your blood, it's going to coat your arteries.
And there's no cholesterol in whole food plant-based foods.
No cholesterol.
Zero.
There can be tiny amounts of saturated fat, a little bit of saturated fat, but the cholesterol, it comes from animal products.
Yeah, so you don't get any cholesterol.
And then people say, well, aren't you supposed to have cholesterol? Hormones are needed with cholesterol. It's like, well, that's what HDL cholesterol is. LDL cholesterol is going to come from the exterior, aspect of eating the animals. But when we look at our HDL, that's, made inside of us for hormonal regulations and so many other things. And that's going to be there. And when we eat more exterior cholesterol and goes into our body, we have to make extra cholesterol ourselves because the HDL helps get rid of the LDL and just, a whole mess there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, whole food plant-based doesn't have the cholesterol there, which means and it's insane how fast you can clean out a cardiovascular tract by getting the cholesterol of your diet and putting dark leafy greens into your body.
Dark leafy greens, cruciferous, the cruciferous food group. Arugula, spinach, kale,
or even your tender leafy greens. The dark leafies there,
the sea greens, those are cancer reversing and quickly disease reversing.
It does, so many things. Yeah. So many things.
Eat greens, and that's what our Simone Caesar is all about.
Yeah, eat greens and put on your lemon so you can get iron assimilation as well.
We got our lemon and our Simone Caesar, and we're gonna link up down the road and do a commercial and have you try it out with your family.
Yeah.
That would be cool. Just pour it on
I'm
everything.
eating again. I can't wait.
Yeah. Like 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah. The environment really, because you kind of, ignorance is bliss, and I don't want to watch this documentary or learn about this because then the truth is unveiled, and now I have to decide what direction I want to live. And Cowspiracy was a great documentary, really well made, that shed so much light on the environmental impact of animal agriculture and really caught my eye. So
Cowspiracy is also really, for people who are watching, if you are getting into vegan and looking for reasons, it's easier. It doesn't show the animal rights side. So it's not going to break your heart, or because a lot of people will avoid vegan documentaries because they're worried that it's going to be like sad stuff.
And it's out there. And Cowspiracy was really easy to watch and mind-blowing facts. Yeah. Mind-blowing.
Cowspiracy, Forks Over Knives, Game Changers. Those
Seaspiracy.
Seaspiracy, I'm just saying the easy ones.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking for easy documentaries.
Food Choices is where I started.
Yeah.
Food Choices was pretty black and white and not too extreme.
Yeah, not too extreme. Mm-hmm. Even with the facts, because some of the documentaries you'll watch and it just, they make it sound like this like cure-all panacea, kind of thing. But the very balanced in those documentaries, which I appreciate.
Do you think a whole food plant-based lifestyle is for everyone?
Yes, I do. I think that the human body, again, we're capable of eating fallback foods. That, we are capable of putting foods into our bellies. It's one of the reasons that we were able to expand as far as we have as an animal, right? Our bloodline started in South Africa, it's most likely thought, and we moved on from there. So being able, even starting before we were Homo sapiens, we were a high fruit, primate. And you can see the way that through our, teeth, the way our teeth have changed. We brought in tubers, we brought in dark leafy greens. We have cheeks and cheek teeth for a reason, to be able to eat these foods and mold them around. And our digestive tract looks a certain way for a reason. And it has the acids in it for a reason. You are not that different from me. The acidity in your mouth and in your stomach isn't where you can like eat steak and I can only eat salad. Mm-hmm. Steak is very hard on the body and you see that, but we can eat it if we're crossing the Alps and it's winter and all we can find is a rabbit, right? Back in the day. So we have these fallback foods that we're capable of eating. We're omnivore for survival, not for necessity. So when it comes to us thriving as human beings, the way to eat is whole food plant-based. You can add, and that's not even vegan. Whole food plant-based, vegan is brings in processed foods. And then you can move into paleo. A lot of people get really great health benefits from going paleo. Why? Because they're getting rid of all the processed foods out of their diet. You can amp that up next by going whole food plant-based with your, paleo thoughts. But as far as whole food plant-based goes, it's just the science. If you want to go to nutritionfacts.org, it's a website run by Dr. Michael Greger. It has no, there's no ads. It is literally just the science. And, one of the great things he does is he looks at studies that say that milk is great or eggs are great. And he looks at who funded it, what the study was about, who was eating what in the study, why it says it's healthy. But then he talks about the foods that he talks about this, chronic disease that can be caused by the foods that we eat and how the effects work for the foods that we're made to eat. And his book, How Not to Die, is one of the best books you can listen to or read. It's amazing. So Fiber Fueled also is a great book for getting into this. And both of those are it's not like this is what I think. It's not anecdotal. It's peer-reviewed science saying this is why, this is how, and these are how the foods that aren't whole food plant-based, that go into the omnivore category, this is how they're going to affect your body. This is the health outcomes you're going to have from it.
Yeah, number one tip, get rid of the processed food. Doesn't matter what you're eating, less processed food.
You're going to see health benefits if you get rid of processed food. No matter what, again, like I said, people who go paleo are like, oh, well, paleo is the healthiest because, my kid's autism went away. I'm like, well, that's because you stopped feeding them macaroni and cheese and goldfish, so.
I would love to be around you when someone's like, oh, I just can't go vegan, or
it's super
I want to see it.
I love to figure out their why. Because then we'll go down this track. Because I was sitting outside of schmancy grocery store in LA called Erewhon, and this one guy, he's like there, and he's like, well, I'm not vegan because I love regenerative farming. I'm like, well, let's talk about regenerative farming. And so we talk about scalability. We talk about the way it's going to affect the terrain. Well, how many people can we feed with regenerative farming? And and he's like, okay, well then. Okay. Well, this is why I need to eat this way, or environmentalists, I've had just really rad conversation. I love following their path and just, especially with the Socratic method, asking them why, and then going into that. It's a lot of fun.
I'm not trying to create just debates. I'm trying to create a win-win situation. So, for example, try to get ahead of a potential man-made disease that you have control over, which is through ingesting food.
Yeah.
And why would you wait until this disease is knocking at your door?
Yeah, where you have to reverse it.
I'm in the hospital, and now I need to see Kaska for advice instead of getting ahead of it.
Yeah, hopefully this podcast will give people that option, right? People who are listening today will give people that option, because the thing is most people don't know that that's what they're signing up for. They don't know that what's causing the cardiovascular disease and the number one cause of death in our country being, cardiovascular issues. They don't know that their cancer, maybe it is genetic from an epigenetic, they're weak to the aspect that they could get colon cancer, but they don't have to get it. It's turned on by the food that we eat. There's I can't remember where in Africa, but there was this tribe that they studied, I think it's Namibia, and they were totally genetic disposition to have diabetes, but nobody had diabetes because they're not eating the food that would cause diabetes, and they're not eating in a way that would cause diabetes. So just because we are possibly loaded to be more susceptible to a chronic disease doesn't mean we have to genetically get these chronic diseases. The food that we eat is what is usually causes the expression to come through. A lot of cancers, it's genetically, the cancer rates that we see, I believe they say it's 4 to 7% genetics. After that, it's caused by, it's turned lifestyle. On by the food. Yeah, by lifestyle.
Yeah. And what are some tips, food-wise, being specific, that someone's clueless? Where do I get started? Besides figure out what you like to eat and do more of that, like fruit. If you like watermelon, stay with it.
Yeah, stay with it.
What do you like to, maybe a superfood, Kaska's superfood list, maybe 3 or 4 or 5.
3 or 4. Okay. Well, 2 things there. So the superfood list, I'm going to say fruit in the morning, salad in the evening, or as your superfood idea. Oats, legumes, so if you can work in oatmeal or, and work in any kind of legume, beans, lentils, soy, chickpeas, hummus, so, eating like that. And people are like, it's expensive and it's time consuming. And I say, go to the grocery store, look at the beans and the fruits and the vegetables and buy what you like, and work that into what you're eating. Don't think that you have to find recipes and get all hard. Boil some potatoes, put on some rad, spices and salt onto them. Get a vegan butter. Miyoko's is my favorite. Put that on. Have that with, potatoes, rice, all of these things that have been your sides that you love for all these years, make that your main. And if you're going to work meat out of your diet or eggs or whatever, have that be your little sides and have the main be the things that you already love. The baked potatoes, the broccoli, your favorite salad with your Caesar, dressing on it, and have a salad with your dinner and maybe have an idea like, okay, I'm going to start with a small salad and I'm going to grow my salad bigger and bigger. I've worked with people who hate vegetables and they have Crohn's, right? It's a digestive issue. And so to get them to a place where they'll start eating greens and like it, I'm just like, get this, green powder and put it into a smoothie with fruit, bananas, where you don't even taste it, or, blend spinach in. And they're like, ugh. And then they're like, I don't even taste it. It's awesome. I'm like, yeah. And that gets their microbiome to a place where they're getting used to having the greens. And then they start to crave the greens and want the greens and like work that into their system. But greens are going to do amazing things if you can work in more greens, fruit in the morning. Don't be afraid of the sugar.
Gluten-free. What's up with gluten? I have some eczema here and skin reactions and gluten, and when we're talking grains, make sure the word whole is in front of it.
Yeah.
Unrefined grains are good for you. T. Colin Campbell, I heard some astonishing fact that blew my mind. 80% of your diet should be carbs is what he recommended in a E. Cornell class that I took, which, whoa, carbs. I don't want carbs. Unrefined grains, oatmeal, quinoa, wild rice.
This world, gluten-free and carbs don't mean, oatmeal. Well, oatmeal can be, gluten-free. So it doesn't mean a really great rustic wheat bread. Gluten-free in this world now means this highly processed food, that they're eating instead of having a healthy wheat bread, but who knows? Because when I'm working with people who do have chronic issues, we do get rid of the gluten in corn until they're healthier and feeling better. And then we slowly work it in. I usually work it in with barley, and I usually have them put it in their smoothies, little amounts at a time, so they can build up their microbiome's ability to work with the gluten. But gluten has also been attached to being really good for our brain health. So there's two kinds of gluten-free. I don't eat a lot of wheat or gluten products, whole food, plant-based, or and never highly processed, in general, just because I like fruits and vegetables so much. But gluten has been attached to brain health. It's been attached to microbiome success. So I think gluten is amazing, and what we've done to be gluten free is crazy. Again, like oh, it's a gluten free cupcake. It's like, what? And also gluten can be seen in the same light as carbs. What have we done to gluten? What have we done to carbs? Again, it's the cupcake. That's the carb. It's the loads of pasta. It's the desserts. It's the sugar. It's the highly processed foods. When you're talking carbs, you're talking about baked potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn, even fruit. That we're not eating those things because of carbs. It's not the same thing. Those are carbs that we need to have highly in our diet. I can't remember the number that Dr. Michael Greger gives us. If people in the U.S. just ate one more piece of fruit a day, like how much better our health would be as a culture. So yeah, when the negative things are being said about carbs and the negative things are being said about gluten, it's the highly processed forms. And then also that made me think about keto. Everyone's like, oh, keto, there's so many amazing, studies on what ketosis does to your body. Well, these aren't fed states of ketosis. These are unfed states of ketosis. That's what I'm in right now. You can see amazing effects when your body goes to an unfed state of ketosis, and that again is going to be coupled with autophagy and the things that are happening inside of a fasted body to help someone heal. It's been, ketosis has been used to help people heal, via places like True North with Dr. Alan Goldhammer. Fed ketosis is a completely different thing. There's enough time now that people have been doing this keto thing, which is just Atkins reinvented, where Harvard is being able to put through studies showing the effects on the kidneys, on the blood, on the human body due to putting in no carbs, and no fruit, and putting in like heavy carnivoristic, foods into our body, and it's not good. So it's really worrisome.
Nice. Yeah, so keep eating fruit.
Yeah, eat your
Juice
fruit in the morning.
How about juicing?
I think so. When it comes to juicing, I like juice as a medicine. So one of
cleansing.
Yeah, it's very cleansing.
Because again, my last podcast, he was doing he did a 123-day juice fast.
Yeah.
The New Year came around and he was going to juice.
Yeah.
And just elaborate a little more on juicing as a medicine, as opposed to maybe drinking juice instead of chewing it and eating it.
Yeah. I think juice can be really helpful, like, depending on what someone's healing from, depending on the state of your guts, it can be just such a great way to get in lots of nutrients. And when my favorite thing for juice is the dark leafies you can put in, putting in the dandelion greens, putting in the bitters, and adding an apple, if that's helpful for getting it down into your belly and drinking it. And it puts in a condensed amount that would be, for especially if you have digestional issues, you wouldn't be able to put into your stomach. But when it comes to eating, so with juice, when it comes to the fruit juices and things, eat the fruit, because the amount of fruit you're going to have inside of a juice bottle, without the fiber to slow it down, without all the other phytonutrients that your body uses to put the sugar into your body, I don't think that's the best. I don't think it's the worst. And it's makes me think of, I want to tangent into diabetes there, because people are like, oh, that's just diabetes in a bottle. I'm like, diabetes isn't caused by sugar. That's a byproduct. Diabetes is caused by fat. You have too much fat for your insulin receptors to be able to bring the sugar, so the sugar gets stuck in the blood. So it seems like a sugar issue, but it's not. So anyway, going back to eating versus not, I think for healing, if you need to heal and you need to get some extra nutrients in, you're doing very mostly green-based juices, I think they're very beneficial. Otherwise, eat your salads. What it does for our jaws, and the way that the amount, how our body is meant to time the nutrients coming into our body with the fiber and the other phytonutrients in there to work together to simulate what those things can do for us, is very important. I'll eat 3 or 4 apples for lunch. That'll be a lunch. How many apples are inside of a thing of juice that you can down? I drink things fast too. I'm not a sipper. I'm like, whoop. Like I can down a bottle of juice, and that's, a ton of apples in moments, and go on in my day. And my body's getting a hard hit of, sugar to the system, which it's not bad sugar. It's just too much all at once, because it's not able to time in. It's more than I would eat in one sitting. So, yeah.
It's almost like you're a kid and your parent drops you off at karate class and you have all these belts. And like when you dive into the vegan world, there's all these belts you could, raise the ladder, and you're on that like black belt where you're water fasting and you could juice fast, and you know how to distinguish, all right, I should be eating food or I should be healing.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, it's like, just dive into no processed food, eat as much as you can that grows in the ground, eat the potatoes, eat the greens, eat the berries, just keep eating.
Yeah.
And, you'll kind of get it all together, and then you can level up to that red belt or blue belt. I used to take karate, and you start with a white belt.
I do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So you get
it's
your
like a
stripes.
video game, maybe for the other younger generation of a video game, leveling up.
Yeah.
And you got to start somewhere, and then you learn about this juice fasting, and maybe it's healing mentally, not just physically. Mm-hmm. And it's mental conditioning, and it's discipline, and it's your ability to not just stuff your face with food, and you kind of savor, and you almost chew your juice, I've been told.
Yeah, people, chewing your juice, and that helps you drink slower. And people have had amazing results off of juice fasting. One of my favorites is Bobby Buns on the East Coast. Everyday Detox has a great podcast with him. He's hilarious, and he was big dude, and he did 100 days on juice and changed his life. Like, people can change their life doing juice fasts. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just taking it from my perspective of it. But if you're somebody out there and you want to up your health, and you're willing to do a week on a local juicery's juice fast, or a juice cleanse or juice feast, that's amazing. Cleanse is something that's healthier than what you're doing right now. So if it's healthier than what you're doing right now, it's going to help you out. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just 1% better every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just keep leveling up.
Yeah.
I think I kind of, last little bit here, I think I skewed away from what I wanted to see your reaction on. And that's the contradictions of meat versus plant-based and health. What happens if someone goes, oh, like, I love meat, or I need meat in my teeth and this and that. And then you're like, well, you can't argue it's the right thing to do for the animals, and it helps the environment. Like it's kind of majority rules. There's 3 pillars we're talking about: the health, the environment, and the animals. And 2 out of the 3 are non-negotiables. It's clearly not good for animals, and clearly harming the environment,
and clearly harming our health. Yeah,
which people like to go back and forth, and if you
the peer-reviewed science is
doses of meat in small amounts, and people can justify anything.
You're saying clearly though.
The 2 out of the 3 are,
yeah,
I don't know what percentage of vegans there are, 2-3%. Small.
Yeah, small.
You're going to keep coming across people and trying to educate them.
Especially with my tattoos, because I just advertise it all the time. So I'm
almost
always in
on your forehead
about it. Yeah.
So then when they're like, oh, well, I like meat for health purposes, and I eat quality meat. I hunt and kill my own.
Yeah.
So it's the cleanest.
Yeah.
Well, what about the environment and
the animals?
The animals.
If someone's like, hey, I read your tattoo and, but I hunt my meat. I'm like, that's, you got to bring him in with the honey, right? If I was an animal, I'd rather be hunted than live on a slaughter lot. I'd rather have like a quick, a responsible hunter, deal with me than suffer in a slaughter lot. Usually though, people who hunt and eat meat, I'm like, so I'll say, is that you only eat your hunted meat? They're like, well, no. They still eat the burgers everywhere. That's just their reason for why they still eat meat, is because they hunt. Rarely do the people I know and talk to only eat the meat that they provide. They're still going to go out and eat the various other forms of meat. And so I'll bring them in with the kindness, and then they'll be like, yeah, well, our teeth. I'm like, really? Like our teeth, these aren't canines. If you look at elephants, gorillas, chimpanzees, our primate relatives, they're not, they will eat a little bit of meat sometimes. They'll usually do it over forms of aggression, to be like, don't eat out of our nut tree or we're going to eat you, kind of thing. Or they'll eat shrubs, they'll find worms, but they're not eating meat like we eat meat. And again, it's usually some kind of fallback. It's like they need the nutrients from it. So this is the thing that's available, and they have the ability to. We do have omnivore teeth. We're just not meant to eat omnivore unless necessary. And we thrive when we eat in a fruit, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and legumes way of eating.
All right. What I've been asking this to all my guests.
Okay.
Key to life.
The key to life? Well, I'm going to go nerdy with this again. Harvard study of longevity is going to say the key to a life that is bringing through longevity in the most healthiest thing we can do. We've been talking about food, is connection and community, and being able to have people around that you can that share joy with, share discomfort with, hug. So I think just living a life where you're creating beauty around you, and where you feel happy to get up in the morning, so
yeah, well said. I know they do studies on making money versus having a community, and that your happiness is way more if you have something to look forward to with the community as opposed to just a lot of money.
If you look up Team Scaesar Alzheimer's, you'll find how to spell their names, and look for their podcasts. They have amazing information through them. They did one on recently with John Robbins, who was the heir to Baskin Robbins. And getting to hear his story again is just phenomenal. Listen to his story. He was, the heir to Baskin Robbins, and the way that he, his change and his transformation, and now what he and his son Ocean Robbins doing are amazing. But they just spoke to the person who is on the scientific team for the longevity study through Harvard University, and how he goes into the beauty of community and connection, whether you're making lots of money or not, whether you're super healthy or not, whatever it is, but having your base of healthy humans, because sometimes we keep friends who are toxic for us, just to have people around. But we're a communal creature. We need to have people around us. And that podcast, it just came out recently on the Team Scaesar podcast, and it's amazing. And if this leaves you with any questions, if you don't mind, I'm just going to say, you can message me on Instagram at Kaska Vegan.
It's so important to have community, and then even with this change, any change is support system.
Yeah.
And accountability. A buddy, you know, like when you're swimming in the ocean, swim with the buddy.
Yeah.
When you're trying to go vegan, have a buddy.
Yeah.
Or any change, and
and
it's nice that you're, you know, putting your time and energy into people's lives, and I'm sure it's so rewarding.
It is, yeah, it is very. I feel constantly. It's just I love to see people thrive. You know, I love seeing people happy and healthy and feeling, you know, so good. You know, I've definitely like hooked friends up with other friends. I'm like, oh, you guys would be a great couple. And then they're like, you know, when you see them in love, or when someone comes to me and they're unhealthy and they get better, it feels amazing. It feels amazing, not because from a place where I'm like, oh, I did that. It's just because they're happy and they're living a better life, and that feels really good.
Yeah. So.
And I'm saving animals by doing it. That's like that was my thing. Is like if I help people see how their health will get better by helping them, you know, reverse chronic diseases, then, you know, they don't want to eat as many or zero animals, you know, then that's my sneaky way of being able to help save animals and help the environment as well.
Being plant-based and doing it for going on 7 years this February, it's the best win-win-win.
Yeah. Some people will be like, oh, you think you're better than us because, you know, you're helping the environment. You're like saving animals. It's like, no, I don't think you're better, but I feel fucking awesome. I feel awesome knowing that I'm living a life where I'm helping just through my daily way of being, just a little bit, you know, and then after that, it's just, I'll figure it out.
And I want you to feel as awesome as I do. That's why I'm doing all this.
Yeah.
Not to feel above you.
Yeah.
Like, there can only be so many chefs in the kitchen. There can only be so many leaders. Like, people have to follow a little bit and trust that, hey, like, you're going to feel great.
Yeah.
If you want to.
And you're going to want to tell your friends, and then you're going to have to go through what we're going through and feel this way. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Well, Kaska, thank you so much for, you know, donating your time.
My pleasure.
And coming on the show. Big high five.